Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting. Hi, welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting on May 6th. The time is now 5:30 p.m. and we are calling the meeting to order. Can we please call the roll?
Mr. Bresnahan?
Here.
Mrs. Lewinsky?
Here.
Mrs. Hassler?
Here.
Mrs. Assif? Here. Mrs. Troutman?
Here.
Dr. Henry? Mrs. Arvanites?
Here, we have 6 board members present and 1 board member absent. I will open us up for the Committee of the Whole meeting then. I'm seeing that we don't have any public comments, yes? So we'll skip the public comment section of the board meeting. And we will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I will turn it over to Dr. Campbell, who is going to kick us off for the Committee of the Whole.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third and final Committee of the Whole for the 25-26 school year. Tonight, we have 2 specific agenda items that we're going to share. The first being an overview of the new Illinois accountability system, and then the second being secondary student supports. To launch us off in our first conversation regarding the Illinois accountability system, in 2018, the Illinois State Board of Education introduced the current system that's used for recognizing school performance with a system of school designations as required by the federal Every Student Succeeds Act. Throughout the 2024-25 and this current school year, ISB has led a comprehensive review of the summative designation system. That was shared with you during our first Committee of the Whole meeting that we anticipated some pretty significant changes. So tonight I have asked my colleague, Dr. Jacob Wirtz, to come and to share with you what those changes are and just to be aware of how moving forward that Illinois State Board of Education will share publicly progress of our schools. At this time, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Wirtz.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Good evening, everyone. And here we go. In tonight's presentation, we've got information on updates to the system for issuing school summative designations. Beginning with a brief overview of what summative designations are and why we have them, how they've reflected performance of District 205 schools in recent years. We'll then discuss why and how ISB is changing the system. The bulk of the presentation will cover the details of the proposed new system, specifically the profile of performance model, which is a substantial shift from the system we've used previously. The presentation will close with some information about the upcoming steps and how our team's preparing for the fall 2026 designations. Following the presentation, we'll have some time for board discussion. To start with the most general context for the designations, as Dr. Campbell mentioned, federal law under the Every Student Succeeds Act requires states to assign each school a summative designation based on specific criteria in accordance with federal guidelines, which I'll highlight in a moment. The criteria used for summative designations are a small subset of the data we report publicly and accessible through the Illinois report card. Illinois has proposed changes to its system for using data to calculate summative designations and expects approval of these changes to come this summer. If approved, the new system will apply to the fall 2026 summative designations, reflecting our current school year performance. ISB is proposing these changes primarily in response to 3 concerns with the current system. First, the current system is norm-based. Like grading on a curve, it's designed to make comparisons between schools rather than providing schools and districts with clear performance targets to aim for. This leads to a second concern, which is that the current system provides misleading data on improvement. Because it's norm-based, it masks statewide improvement trends. Currently, a fixed percentage, exactly 10% of schools, are labeled exemplary each year, regardless of how much school performance may have actually changed statewide. And finally, the current system impedes resource targeting. Although District 205 schools are not directly impacted by ISBE's targeted school improvement efforts, this work has guided the state's overall strategy for school accountability and impacted the redesign. ISBE has shared that the new system is designed to ensure that state and federal resources are being most precisely directed to those schools most in need of significant support. While ISBE is working to address the concerns I just identified on the previous slide, it's important to note that the state must continue to adhere to requirements established by ESSA. The law requires states to use certain measures, such as graduation rate and English learner progress, while allowing flexibility on others, like how each state defines targets for student achievement and growth. Within that flexibility, the metrics included in the summative designation must meet certain criteria, which limits the types of data that can be used. One requirement is that all measures used in the summative designation are collected statewide. NWEA MAP assessment data, for example, is used by D205 and many other districts to monitor school performance locally, but it's not utilized universally across the state of Illinois and therefore could not be used in the summative designation. Before diving into the details of the new system ISBE has proposed adopting, I want to establish some local context by briefly reviewing District 205's historical performance under the current accountability system. The key takeaways here are excellence and continued improvement. Since the summative designations were first introduced in 2018, all of our schools have consistently been rated as either commendable or exemplary each year, and we've seen significant improvement over time, with 9 District 205 schools receiving an exemplary rating at least once in the past 2 years. Our district's steady improvement in our summative designations is a direct result of concerted efforts. As a district, we've prioritized robust school improvement planning and aligned professional learning. These efforts have resulted in better outcomes for our students, which are reflected in the designations. In addition to our school improvement efforts, we work continuously to refine our data collection systems and processes to ensure alignment with ISBE guidance, which undergoes minor but potentially significant revisions annually. This year, the changes are more substantial, requiring additional focus and attention on our data collection and reporting. These efforts ensure the hard work of our students and educators is accurately reflected in the state report card and summative designations. Moving on now to the details of the new system. The 5 designations used in the new system shown here are intended to provide clear signals about a school's overall performance. Importantly, these signals appear both in the form of an overall summative designation and as signals of performance on each individual metric used in calculating that summative designation. For example, a school may rate as exemplary on one measure of performance and commendable on another. Next, we'll take you through the process of translating individual indicators into a school-wide designation. The new system establishes a 3-step process to combine performance across individual indicators to calculate a school's final profile of performance summative designation. First, the system determines core performance. A school's initial performance level is set by its strongest score on the core indicators of proficiency, growth, and graduation rate, with some caveats I'll discuss later in the presentation. Secondly, the system accounts for elevating indicators, which are metrics intended to identify whether schools are organized for improvement. If a school achieves high performance on its elevating indicators, it can potentially lift the school's final summative designation. And finally, the system factors in student group performance. The system calculates steps 1 and 2 for the whole school, as well as for individual student groups, such as students with disabilities and English learners. If a student group has particularly low performance, specifically if a group has a comprehensive profile, this can lower the overall school designation. So what are the metrics that define core and elevating performance? In the redesign process, ISBE also made adjustments to how it defines and calculates certain measures. The proficiency measure has been redesigned as a single composite score combining ELA, math, and science. This replaces the 3 separate measures previously used for each subject. Growth is also being redesigned as a composite of ELA and math. This replaces both the previous 9th grade on track indicator of growth in high schools, as well as the separate ELA and math growth metrics for K-8 schools. Because science assessments are not taken in each grade level, there's no growth measure for science. And the attendance measure has been renamed and reframed to focus on a positive goal of supporting more students to attend school regularly. Individual students are defined as demonstrating consistent attendance if their attendance rate during a school year exceeds 90%. This aligns with the previous benchmark used for chronic absenteeism, which was defined as the percentage of students who were absent for 10% or more. This slide presents the benchmarks for each level of the indicator on each metric included in the new system. Schools receive an indicator on each column applicable to their grade span. To give one brief example, using the composite proficiency column, a school with over 75% reaching proficiency targets on average across ELA math and science would receive an exemplary rating on the composite proficiency indicator. More importantly, this slide shows that there are transparent benchmarks with robust targets that enables our school improvement planning process to align with clear, defined goals. This replaces the previous system where performance levels were moving targets based on the performance of other schools statewide. So with scores on each indicator calculated, the system now moves through that three-step process to determine a profile of performance. The first step in the process is determining a school's core performance. In K-8 schools, core performance is defined by the strongest indicator between proficiency and growth, unless any core indicator is comprehensive. In the example illustrated here, the strongest core indicator is exemplary, and the other core indicator is higher than comprehensive. Therefore, the core performance of this school would be defined as exemplary. The core requirements for an exemplary designation at the high school level are slightly more complex due to the inclusion of graduation rate. The example shown here illustrates this. The example graduation rate is in the exemplary range. However, that fact alone does not grant a high school an exemplary core designation. High schools must also achieve an approaching exemplary designation or higher in either proficiency or growth to obtain an exemplary core designation. Because the example school shown here has achieved approaching exemplary for proficiency and growth, its core designation is exemplary. Moving on to the second step in the process, this slide highlights the role of elevating indicators in the new profile of performance model. Their purpose is to allow strong performance on key support metrics to lift the final designation of a school. This is a strengths-based feature that critically can never lower a school's designation. Elevating indicators work in two different ways, depending on a school or group's core performance. In one scenario, school A, shown on the top right, has an approaching exemplary or commendable core performance, and it is able to elevate its summative designation by one level if it has two exemplary elevating indicators. In the other scenario, school B, with either a developing or comprehensive core performance, has lower bars to meet to qualify for an elevation. They can be elevated by one level by attaining one exemplary and one approaching exemplary elevating indicator. The third and final step in the profile of performance determination is to consider performance of student groups, which are calculated whenever there are 20 or more students within a school who share certain characteristics. This can include students with disabilities, students sharing a particular race or ethnic background, economically disadvantaged students, and English language learners. Steps 1 and 2 are calculated for each student group. If any group has a comprehensive rating after accounting for its core and elevating indicators, the overall school designation can be no higher than commendable. This is illustrated in the example shown here. The overall school indicators, shown on the left, would initially result in an exemplary rating because of the exemplary graduation rate and approaching exemplary proficiency. However, one of the student groups within that school has a comprehensive rating, as shown on the right. Because of this, the school's final summative designation would be lowered to commendable. This example illustrates the critical importance of monitoring and ensuring success for all students we serve. With the transition to this new system, ISB has also adjusted the number and names of summative designations available. This slide presents a comparison of the new and old systems of designation. A key shift is the creation of an approaching exemplary designation, which contains many schools that would have previously been classified together with a large band of commendable schools. The chart here, provided by ISB, provides a visual representation of the distribution of schools across the various designations, illustrating a comparison of the old and new systems using the 2025 statewide data, for example. The current 2025 column, shown at the bottom, reveals how wide the band of commendable schools currently is. This wide category masks significant variation among schools that currently share a summative designation. The new K-8 and new 9-12 distributions, modeled using 2025 data, are shown above. The key shift here is the breakup and reclassification of that large middle band of formerly commendable schools to designate more schools as exemplary or approaching exemplary if they meet the rigorous new benchmarks ISB has proposed. And this final slide now outlines the key next steps in the timeline. ISB submitted their proposal to the U.S. Department of Education on April 17th. We anticipate final federal approval this summer, with the new system being implemented in October. Data for core indicators comes from state testing, including IAR, ISA, and ACT, which we completed earlier this spring. We expect to receive the preliminary results of those assessments in June. Those are preliminary results provided for internal review. The official results sent to families come at a later date. And that will give us a clearer picture of our performance before the official fall designations are released. All D205 schools have already secured one exemplary elevating indicator by meeting the 95% student participation benchmark on the climate survey. And as we close out the year, we remain focused on promoting consistent attendance. I'll just note that we're going to revisit tonight. I know this is a lot to take in, and we'll revisit this information in the fall when the summative designations are announced to clarify any questions regarding how our designations for the current year were calculated. And with that, that concludes the presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Campbell to guide us in discussion.
Take a sip of water, Dr. Wirtz. You did it. We just so to give a little context, we have been living this and talking about this for the last 2 years. ISB has engaged districts. We've looked at various drafts and iterations and provided information and been on listening tours and webinars and all the things. Since this was voted on as recent as the April 14th, knowing that the current data will be used in this particular format, we wanted you to have an initial introduction to it. I will say that there is some complexity to it. And we also gave Dr. Wirtz a very clear time frame of sharing this journey of how we've arrived here over the last 2 years in 25 minutes. And so I know that there were moments when board members are like, what is going on? So I think for us, a couple of things. If you all will go, if you could go back to slide 9. I'm sorry, it's the one that has the 3 steps for the performance. Yeah. So in the slides after, Dr. Wirtz kind of walked us through for the elementary in the elementary space versus the high school space, what's considered core indicators, what's considered elevating indicators, and then the factoring in of the student groups. So just really, I think the first and foremost is just framing it in that way when we look at all, like, their core indicators. Once those core indicators are determined, then the elevating indicators can impact that, and then lastly, the student group performance. So I think that framing is first and foremost, and then you all can see on that next slide that you go to gives an overview of those indicators. All right, and so, yep.
Question. It says add elevating indicators if applicable. What's the if applicable? Why would we have them or not have them?
It wouldn't be applicable if the school's core indicator was exemplary. because
Got it.
there's nowhere to elevate to.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
and then the factor
Yeah,
in the
the-
student group performance, if applicable, that's if those.
If
have
a
additional
school was
groups.
very non-diverse and had no.
Got it,
you
okay.
know,
Yep.
Wait, so to,
Didn't meet the threshold of the 20 students that create a group, so that would be not applicable.
but to clarify, you could, be exemplary in the three core indicators and completely horrible in the elevating, and it still would not affect your exemplary rating?
That's correct.
No, see, there you go, it's
Yeah,
correct.
the
That's why
elevating
it's
indicators cannot
mind-blowing to me.
lower your.
That is just
Which
mind-boggling
but
to
let's
me.
take that example. Let me add some context around that. When you have high-performing schools, they're not going to, who are already at, if we looked at the percentage indicators, for example, right, they're hitting 83% proficiency in the old model or something higher than that, then they probably are not likely to have a factor that's going to reduce there's not an add-on that's going to reduce them because they're already hitting these high levels. Is that?
That's correct. I think that, one, if a school is, if we just look at like what they are, 95% of students, or sort of your participation rate on the climate survey may be something that if a school is hitting exemplary proficiency growth and graduation rate, they would say, we're not going to invest time in ensuring that we reach that target anymore because we don't need to worry about that elevating indicator. And so they might have terrible participation on their climate survey.
Okay.
And decide that that wasn't a priority for them, or
so
just, yeah.
I will just say this, I don't want this to be the guide of how we here approach our priorities, right? It's great if we're going to walk out with an exemplary because we have all the, composite and growth and proficiency and graduation rate. If we get exemplary there, I don't want us to ignore EL, right? Like, I don't want us to be less important just because it can't hurt us.
Absolutely, Ms. Troutman. I 100%
I can't, like, it's just.
yeah, agree with that. And what we also know, even in our the way the current system is set up, that there are still elements that we here in D205 value
Right.
a part of our measurement and our assessment of school experience for our students. And so, yes, we want and continue to monitor this data, but in addition to this, there's also other things that are of value to our community. And so I 100% appreciate you saying that.
It kind of takes me back to when we first, maybe even 4 years ago, when we first started defining how we're going to measure growth in general. And at the time, especially in the creation and the kind of foundation of the strategic plan, we made it very clear how we wanted to measure, of course, with the help of Dr. Campbell and her team. And even at that time, we often said things like, the state report card's the state report card and it's one indicator, yet we have all these other indicators at play. And it's a reason why we offer the MAP test and the the other one, I forget the acronym, I'm sorry, and what was it?
WEA.
I got it, NWEA, thank you. In addition to the IAR, or at the high school, starting to looking at number of students enrolling in AP scores, their outcomes of their scores. Those are all variables at play that we use to monitor. I do agree with you, Courtney, in that I wouldn't want a subgroup to fall aside in effort because it's not going to negatively impact our score. I don't believe that that's how we've approached it, but I also believe that we're at a place where when we're looking at our what I'll call subgroups, they're calling them something different here, the board has put in significant resources to support the growth and development in those areas for all students, and that those core principles don't change, right? This is one indicator. We know there are many other points of indication that help define our student experience and the opportunity to grow and learn for all. And so that core stays. I'm seeing a lot of head nodding. I do have a question, if I could move away a little bit. This criteria indicator performance bands, it's like the next slide. Now, I think everyone, the community, the state, residents of the state are used to seeing percentages as scores. This kind of summary here is, I see that percentages are still a part of, proficiency ratings are still a part of the composite scoring now, but is that going to be very visible in public still, or are percentages kind of, are we kind of diverting away? What, do we know?
So, ISB has not, we don't have a very entirely clear picture of exactly what this is going to look like in terms of how this is going to appear on like Illinois report card. My
Yeah.
anticipation is that, you know, in the way things are currently with Illinois report card, there's a summative designation that includes these things, but then also within Illinois report card, you can go in and you can see what is the percentage proficient on IAR math by grade level. And they haven't announced any intention to redesign or, you know, eliminate that data transparency. So being able to see those individual measures that are broken out should still be, my anticipation is that that still will be available.
So if you have a group, which we do, right, English language learners or special needs, those groups and those kind of percentages or ratings will still be visible to us.
Yes, that's my anticipation, and also that that piece around how steps 1 and 2 are calculated for student groups. And currently, within the existing Illinois report card system, you can look at like what the designation is of a school for the student group, and so I anticipate that those kind of after step 2 of the process, the core and elevating indicator designation that a student group receives will be visible.
Okay, so we are able to monitor it, to continue to monitor it. We're hoping that we'll see next year, right? But we're hoping that we will still get this similar type of information that we've been using in our monitoring of these areas.
Absolutely. In our school leadership teams, as you all know, we have our school improvement plans, and those plans look specifically at the students that we are serving, all students. And so our entry point in school improvement planning, it starts with the data that we're looking at that is inclusive of some of these metrics, but also inclusive of other things in as well. And so school leaders and school teams continue to prioritize for us to closely watch and to examine how students are experiencing and continuing to be successful. It also raises questions when we're not seeing growth or when we're not seeing the intended outcomes, allow school teams to kind of dig a little bit more for us to then determine and for us to ask the questions. And so we've shared, we have various tools internally. We've talked about Next Path. You will hear a little bit about that tonight and how we're continuing to increase our data literacy and our understanding of how students are growing individually within schools and across various subsets and tiers within our district. So 100% that work will continue. And a lot of times what we share publicly, there's so many more layers that happens at the school level and with our school teams and our, we are just so fortunate to continue to be very thoughtful and grounded in student focus, but then also how we're utilizing data to really track and monitor are our strategies and is this our strategic work leading us to the outcomes that we have intended and that have been prioritized by the Board of Education.
Any other thoughts, or, go ahead, Courtney.
Can we look at the, I don't know which number chart this is, this one.
Oh, I was there too.
Okay, I'm like, yeah, look at this one. So, thank you. So this chart is basically saying, my understanding of it is that instead of having this big chunk of 73%, just like commendable, when we break it down onto these new, like, I'm assuming that these top 2 bars of what it would have been if we use the new ratings with this data?
Yes.
Okay, so then, is the goal then is to try to narrow down where the focus should be to improve? Is that why? I'm just trying to decide whether I like this or not, quite frankly. But I want, because more schools are getting exemplary, right? And so, and less school, I mean, I just want to understand, when you look at that new data right now, say 205 was that bottom line, and for the current year. But if we use the new system, we would be one of the top two lines. What do you take away from that? Like, what is it different under this new system, and where would our focus be differently than what they used to, how they used to grade it? I'm not saying it well, so I apologize.
No.
I just,
No, I think you're very clear. I honestly think that looking at this graph, a district could not identify their priorities. Like, I honestly think that the state in every school district and every school would have to go in and really dig in and look at their individual data to underscore what are some areas of prioritization. I think one of the things that was shared, and I know Dr. Wertz can probably say this much more eloquently, is that when you look at the current, all schools were ranked order based on these various indicators. They were put in like a chronological ranking. And they said, after they put all of the schools in a chronological ranking, that the top 10% of the schools, you're exemplary. And what they're trying to do is say that it's not necessarily your exemplary status should not necessarily be based on where other schools are falling. Your exemplary status should be based on the core, of criteria within your school. So the state is trying to take it off of being less about where everybody is performing and more about your specific school and your specific district performance. So back to your question, right? Like, how do you then utilize this data? They have, and I've heard, and I don't want to put words in our state superintendent's mouth, but listening to him talk about this work, listening to his, as we identify what they were attempting to solve for, their hope, Ms. Troutman, is that schools will have a better understanding of where they're currently situated and how to continue to support student and school improvement based on that. Not from this constant moving target based on where all other schools within the district lands.
Well, wouldn't it be, sorry, just to question / add to that, the reason I would assume they're doing that or why it would be beneficial for any school would be because what we're doing in Elmhurst might be very different, or a school that's in the top 10% and is exemplary in Southern Illinois could be completely doing, obviously they're doing different things, but they might not be at the same level as another district, right, or another school. So it's beneficial because then we can focus more on what is where we are and what needs improvement versus just working at schools that maybe aren't even the same caliber as us, or
Yeah.
above or below.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. I think I'm sorry. On that, I want to say that was slide number 4 when it says areas ISB is addressing in the new accountability system is 100% it's normed, and it's about that curve. And so, there are various makeups of schools and districts that I think, based on a curve, can present some questions of equity and truly being able to communicate to their community and to their stakeholders where they are in that improvement process.
So just add a couple of things. The current system that we are transitioning away from is really focused, a lot of the resources from the state and the idea around it is that those are really the only schools that need to work on improvement. So if you're in those bottom 2 tiers, then you're going to get a lot of intensive support from the state Board of Education. There are required plans from the Board of Education, that sort of thing. In the new model, The idea is that everybody can really be exemplary if you work hard enough, if your data is good enough, and that you should consistently be evolving and changing to grow more, and that the more student growth you have, the better off your scores are going to be, and more in the exemplary category. So it's based on that continuous improvement model for every school district and every school across the state, rather than just focusing on that small percentage of schools who are not meeting the targets.
So are they changing the funding model at all then?
To our knowledge, there is no plan to change the funding model. The current evidence-based funding model will still be the norm there. What I'm talking about is, if you go back to that other chart that you hear in the scores that are in the yellow and orange, those come with additional support requirements. So they will be identified for state board improvement, and they do actually, they're required to set aside a part of their title funds. They're required to do some other things there.
As you were talking, Kevin, I had this thought in my head about just grading practices in general, right? And so the concept is really easy. You have a classroom of 25 kids and you say only 10% can get an A, but a kid earned a 91.
Yeah.
And that student should earn the A. So that's the difference between grading on a curve and then grading for attainment of the learning benchmark or whatever it is, right? Yep. And so I often wonder about the 11th% school, the school in the 11th percent on the old model. Yep. And so it does look like a really good faith effort to say, no, once you hit a certain, this is the criteria we're looking at, and once you're at a certain place, you've earned that designation. It doesn't matter if you're 11% or 12% on the list.
Correct.
Yeah.
And with those elevating indicators, it also gives us some really bottom line numbers to aim for, so that we know that every elementary school has to have 90% attendance, which all of our elementary schools already do. Our high school has to, we know what those numbers are and can clearly establish plans right now, rather than focusing on the chronic absenteeism number, which is a moving target.
Great, thanks for that add-in. Anything else on from the board or admin?
So I know the state sometimes changes these, and they also come with some mandates. Are there any additional mandates that they will put on the schools, and any specifically unfunded mandates?
Dr. Rubenstein, maybe you can add to this. They have not communicated anything about changes to additional mandates, or any changes to funding or mandates along with this has not been part of the conversation with what they've presented.
Okay, good.
Okay, I think we can safely transition to our next topic. I know we have a second presentation. Dr. Campbell?
We do, and I think it dovetails nicely into what has already been stated in terms of our board and our community. There are multiple things that we value that might not necessarily directly be seen in certain metrics, and specifically that is attached to our accountability system. But one thing that is true here in D205 is that we care deeply about our student experience. And we care deeply about making sure that we have systems and structures in place to continue to elevate our student experience and to identify what additional supports might be needed. So I am so excited and so pumped tonight in response to that feedback, in response to knowing what our Board of Education has shared and valued, to share tonight that we have a presentation that's going to prioritize our student-centered approach to supporting secondary students that's aligned to our Journey of Excellence framework. And so at this time, I am going to pass the stage and microphone to my dear colleague, Dr. Rubenstein, to take us from here.
Great. We are excited to spend some time with you this evening sharing the secondary student supports in place across our middle schools and at York High School, and offering a look ahead at how we'll continue to strengthen our support for students. It's interesting that Dr. Yonke started out by saying that York High School and high school in general is not preparation for a life in the future. It is life, and we really strongly believe it. As we begin our focus this evening on grades 6 through 12, it's helpful to recognize that this is a meaningful and dynamic stage in a student's development. In elementary school, our students go from really self-contained settings. Students are typically grounded in one classroom community. As they move into middle and high school, they gain increased independence and begin navigating a broader environment with more opportunities for growth. At the same time, students experience really significant development. One of the stats that often comes to mind is that in 7th grade, the typical brain rewires itself faster and more efficiently than any time since early childhood. So there's more brain development and growth going on in middle and high school than at any previous time in a student's history in our school system. It's why sometimes when you ask your teenagers why they did something, their answer is legitimately, I don't know, because they really don't know, because not all of the brain development is in place yet, and that is something that we expect there. Their thinking really becomes more complex, their identities really begin to take shape, and they start to explore their interests and passions in much deeper ways. That growth happens alongside increased academic expectations and a wider ranges of experiences, including some new courses, new relationships, and really important milestones. In many ways, students are expanding their world. They move from that single classroom of 25 peers to multiple classes with new peers in each of those, different teachers, and that shift really creates rich opportunities for connection and discovery and growth, while also reinforcing the importance of strong, coordinated supports to ensure every student feels known, supported, and positioned for success. This is also one of the reasons that a focus on social emotional needs and overall mental health begins to take center stage really in middle school and high schools in each of our classrooms there. So when we think about this from a systems perspective, it's important to recognize that a comprehensive approach to student supports strengthens academic outcomes. And so just as we were just talking about here related to our consistent attendance and strong academic outcomes, efforts to refine our curriculum and focus on student success are most effective when they're part of a broader connected system, which also focuses on attendance. When schools prioritize a strong school climate, which my colleagues, Mr. Dykes will talk about in just a second, and strong attendance and supportive behavioral structures, students are better positioned to thrive academically. Research continues to reinforce that connection, and this is a study from January of this year from the University of Chicago, which highlights that students who feel safe and supported at school tend to have stronger attendance and, in turn, stronger academic outcomes. So creating environments where students feel a sense of safety and belonging is a powerful foundation for both engagement and then stronger academic achievement. So in our work, we are intentionally aligning programs and support services to our strategic plan so that students experience a cohesive and connected system. We know that strong academic outcomes are built through the combination of high-quality instruction, which we have talked about at length here at this table, aligned supports, and a positive learning environment. When those elements work together, students are well-positioned for long-term success. At the core of that approach are clear expectations, some predictable routines, and positive reinforcement, all of which help create schools where students feel safe, supported, and ready to learn. A central priority is ensuring that every student feels known and connected, as we just talked about. We're working toward a model in which each student has a trusted adult, their voice is reflected in our decision-making, and they're supported by a collaborative team that includes school counselors, social workers, deans, And that really strong team-based approach allows us to respond in real time while providing comprehensive supports for our students who need them. We also remain focused and have a renewed focus on helping students to stay on track for what comes next. So beginning in their first year, students engage in goal setting and planning, supported by access to strong curricular experiences, a whole bunch of new of them, and aligned to college and career pathways. That creates meaningful opportunities for students to explore their interests and build toward a clear sense of purpose. This work is ongoing and continues to evolve as we learn and grow as a system. So this evening, you will hear more about those three key areas of focus under our strategic plan: educate, engage, and empower. I have to my left Mr. Tim Dykes, who is our assistant principal for culture and climate at York Community High School. He's also a parent in the community, and he's going to share the work underway to strengthen a positive school environment, including efforts to ensure every student begins their experience at York High School with a strong foundation. Mr. Mark Talbot, who is sitting further to my left here, is our division chair for counseling. And he's going to highlight our student support structures, including how students are identified and connected to the right supports. We are definitely encouraged by the progress in this area and the ways we're using data to strengthen connections and support. One of the other things that you should know about Mr. Talbot is that he is the father of an incoming student to D205, and he is also a York alum. So we have several alums sitting at this table. And then finally, Mr. Mike Piaczynski, our assistant principal for special education and student services, is going to discuss our current approach to college and career readiness and provide a preview of what's ahead with our implementation of School Links, which has already launched. And so I tell you their background and experience to say that this work is really deeply personal for all of us, but improvement at York High School and focusing our students' experience is done no better than by the people who are sitting at this table here. And so with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Mr. Dykes.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So I also was going to steal something from Dr. Yonke and what she said earlier, and that was she talked about being emotionally invested in the building, and it kind of ties to what Kevin just said. I am a community member. I'm a parent. I treat York High School like it's my home, like it is a second home. And for that reason, my goal since I started here almost 3 years ago now is to make York a place where people want to be, to put it very simply. And we have about 3,000 people that come in the building every day, and I want to make it a place where people want to be and try to make a really big place feel smaller. And so along those lines, talking about culture and climate and the work that we've done, kind of starting with the first slide here, the York Culture Committee, and kind of why that came about. Coming in my first year, knowing that getting feedback from staff would be a fairly easy thing, but hearing from students themselves about their experiences and what they think works and what they think really kind of needs to be looked at more closely, we created this committee. With a lot of help from our student services teams. We basically said we're looking for a true kind of cut of our demographics, a true microcosm of our student body to represent the students and the students' opinions. And so this is easily, and I tell the kids this all the time, we meet once a month. It is my favorite day of the month because it's going back to my original roots as an educator. It's when I get to really interact and dig in with students. And so that committee started in about November of my freshman year. We're not ready to go on just quite yet, but we basically try to tackle some major initiatives, just kind of one major initiative a year, working with some of the adults that are on the committee as well as the about 30 students. So the first year, we really went after this We Are Dukes initiative, which many of you heard about last year. And then last year, we created Duke Olympics, and you're going to hear more about all this in a little bit. And then this year, we created kind of Duke Olympics 2.0. So we're going to go on to the next slide and talk a little bit more about what We Are Dukes is, kind of that first initiative. So the purpose of We Are Dukes is to create clear, consistent, aligned expectations building-wide for all of the members of our school community. So that's our students, but that's also our staff. And if you've been in our building, you will know you see We Are Dukes everywhere, and that is intentional. It's outside the building, it's inside the building, but just kind of running through how this process came about. Again, in November of '23, the York Culture Committee, the YCC, we sat down and we kind of started these focus groups of figuring out what do we want to be about? What do we want to be known for? What characteristics represent a Duke? I think a lot of times in organizations, you'll see these acronyms come out, and sometimes people are like, where did that come from and what does that mean? And we're really proud of the fact that we reverse engineered it. We started by listing just a bucket, like name all the characteristics that you think a Duke should be about. And then from there, we kind of came up with synonyms for those characteristics, and then we created the acronym. So it wasn't what are five words that start with a D, U, K, E, S, but it was kind of reverse on that. And so Duke stands for dependable, unified, kind, engaged, and strong. And we were able to wrap that up at the end of the 23-24 school year. We met with our building leadership team then, and that's our division chairs and our deans, and said, okay, now how can we delineate what this looks like in the classroom, what it looks like in common areas of the building, and extracurriculars. So if you actually look at the slide on the far right there, you will see our head softball coach created We Are Duke's characteristics and expectations for the softball program. So this is happening all over the place throughout many areas of the building. That summer then, we really got to work on branding. And it was a really exciting time for me. It was my first full summer working in this position. And if you've been at York, you know that's where all the We Are Duke stuff started kind of popping up around the building, as well as a lot more just York colors and York green. And you just know you're at York when you're walking through the entire building. When August rolled around and we started school, that's when we rolled this out to staff at large and to our student body. So it started with our Institute days, meeting with staff and explaining to them kind of this process and why it's important. In individual departments then, in their PLCs, they met to decide, okay, what does this look like in U.S. history classes? What does this look like in Algebra 1 classes? And so on and so forth. And then finally, in terms of rolling it out to students, on day 2 of school, we have an extended second period. We did it again this year, and we'll do it again next year, where the classes themselves really take time to talk about what does this look like in our individual classroom. And we also have a student-produced video that we show where the students kind of roll out, this is We Are Dukes for the year. Throughout the course of the school year, we are constantly kind of coming back to this in a number of different ways. We have signage up around the building. For example, every classroom has a sign up that says, we are engaged. We are not on cell phones in class. If you look at every external door in the building, we are dependable signs. We do not walk out this door during the school day. So it's just a way that we can kind of continue to couch it in that framework. And then finally, we have a lot of celebrations where we're celebrating when people are doing the things that exemplify being a Duke. We have Parade of Champions for our athletes and our other extracurriculars who are reaching state levels, and we have our Duke Olympics, which I will talk about next. So Duke Olympics was the second major initiative that the York Culture Committee embarked on. And the idea behind this was a couple of things. Number one, we want to make sure that we are really pumping school spirit. As one of the things that I heard when I started my first year was that school spirit had kind of waned a little bit. And we know that a lot of that had to do with COVID and being away from school, but really trying to build that back up, to highlight the Duke's pillars, so not have it just be something that's talked about at the beginning of the year, but something that we're kind of reaffirming throughout the year. And then also just trying to have some fun, raising spirits during a difficult time. We know that coming back from winter break tends to be kind of a low point emotionally. So this is a good kind of little pick-me-up to raise interest. So it's an 11-week campaign in the second semester. Each 2 weeks, we focus on a different pillar of the Duke's acronym. There's a bunch of different ways that students and staff can participate. One of the things that we do is we give students the opportunity to earn points by going to other extracurricular activities, so students supporting each other. So if I'm a student who, I go to a lot of basketball games, but I've never been to a choir concert before, hey, go to a choir concert, go support some students that maybe you normally wouldn't interact with. So kind of creating that bigger sense of community. We have opportunities for staff to nominate staff. We have opportunities for students to nominate staff and call them out for doing great things. And then in the final week of Duke Olympics, we have a lot of competitions. And as you can see in some of the pictures there, we have a big assembly at the end that's both competitive but also a lot of fun and a way to kind of celebrate the culmination of the entire process. So the assembly itself is great. It's a lot of fun, but it's the lead up to that that's really important and really exemplifying and calling out all of these We Are Dukes characteristics. So other things that are happening in the building that need to be stated that are really important to just, when we talk about the learning environment, I think they can kind of be broken up into 4 buckets here. So facilities, and I'm not going to go through all these for the sake of time, but for facilities, if you've been inside York in the last couple of years, you know that we've really gotten a refresh. Whether it's paint or flooring or the cafeteria tables that you all very graciously were a part of, it makes a difference. And students are going to take more pride in their space when they look around and there's something to be really proud of, and they are very proud of it. And it definitely feels like York when you're there. Our safety improvements are very, very key with the new security team, with the new secure vestibules, upgraded lighting, silent alarms on the doors. Those things all matter when it comes to students feeling both physically and emotionally safe in the building. We know that when students come to school and they feel safe, they feel like they can be a little bit more vulnerable and they're open to learn and to participating in class. Celebrations of success, we talked about a few of these, but one thing I do want to point out is the Duke of the Week. This one is so simple, but kids love it. Basically, the idea is like, I call 4 random names on a Friday, and you just have to be in school. And if you're in school and your name is called, you get a T-shirt. And you would think that this is like above high school kids, but man, they love it. They're coming up to me all the time, like, can I be Duke of the Week? Like, no, it's random. It's random. You got to be here. And then some of the systems that we've put into place to really support and make sure that our attendance rate is staying high, that we're staying on top of things. 2 that I want to point out, our attendance intervention system that Mr. Talbot was a big part of and helping with, and our counselors are a big part of. We have a tiered system where if students are missing class and are unexcused, there's different levels and various different adults that are having conversations with those students to get to the root of why they might be missing class. And on top of that, this year we rolled out our York Student Success Center, which is a Tier 2 behavioral center. And we have Tier 2 behavior groups that are happening in there, which is something that is pretty unique for schools. Not a lot of schools, especially bigger high schools, have something like that. So those are all very, very important. So some data that I think is really important to call out. The impact on attendance has been pretty dramatic. In 22-23, in the 22-23 school year, York had the 3rd highest chronic absenteeism rate. It's ironic that we were just talking about the shift away from chronic absenteeism, but had the 3rd highest chronic absenteeism rate in the West Suburban Conference. Last year, we had the 2nd lowest chronic absenteeism rate in the conference. So that's a big, big jump in a short period of time, and a lot of it has to do with creating a space where people want to be. And so we're very, very proud of those numbers. So the final thing we want to talk about, and Kevin had alluded to it, creating a strong start for our 9th graders. That's really a focus that we have that's going on right now in preparation for the class of 2030 coming next year. Some of the things that we already do that are listed here. We go visit all of the D205 middle schools. So over the last 2 weeks, we visited Churchville, we visited Sandburg, we visited Bryan. We offer summer tours over the summer. The principal and assistant principals are in the building, so we offer it up several times where families of ninth graders can come in and get like a 1-hour tour of the building just to feel a little bit more comfortable. We have our back to school bash, which is generally like the night before or 2 nights before the first day of school. Students have their schedules, they can come in, they can walk the building, check out their schedule, see where their locker's at. And then our freshman orientation day. This is something that's going to be new this year. In years past, the freshman orientation had been from 7:40 to 9:25. So we're talking about an hour and a half. And then it was like, go get them. And you talk to upperclassmen now, and they're like, I don't remember much of anything. Like there was all these people talking, and I was just scared, and I didn't know what was coming next. We are excited to be bringing something new this year, Link Crew. So Matt Johnson is our student activities coordinator, and Matt and I went to a Link Crew training back in the beginning of March. And I say March because this has been a lot of work in a very short period of time since then. Link Crew is a national organization or a national program that kind of has 2 goals. It is to support incoming ninth graders and make sure they have a sense of belonging and feel like strong support, but also to develop upper class leaders. And so we are bringing Link Crew to York next year. And I think it's really important to note, we asked staff to recommend students. We gave them like a 1-week window, and we got a lot of recommendations, which was great. We then had 250 rising juniors and seniors apply, which is crazy, because we were worried we might not have enough. We had a lot. And so we chose 190 out of those 250 students who are going to be Link Crew leaders. Link Crew is 95% student-led. So we had a training last Wednesday, and then we will have 2 full training days on August 6th and 7th, where Matt and I are training the leaders. The orientation day itself is pretty much all the leaders that are running the show, and that's pretty amazing. I'm super excited about this, to see our students leading our students, and really the goal of it is each ninth grade student is going to have 2 or 3, let me back up. They'll be put in groups of 10, and they will have 2 to 3 Link Crew leaders per group of 10 incoming ninth graders. So the goal is that every ninth grader has 2 or 3 upper class students that they look around and they see in the halls and they see throughout the year, and they're like, those 2 people have my back. Whether they have a bunch of friends or they have older brothers or sisters, they've got those 2 people that have their back and that are always there for them. And so it's a really exciting program. But again, the whole goal here is to create connections for students, because we know that when students have connections, their attendance improves. When their attendance improves, their engagement in class improves. And when their engagement in class improves, their achievement improves. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you.
So now that we've looked at how we intentionally connect students in our school to ensure strong outcomes, next, Mr. Mark Talbot, our division chair for counseling, will highlight our student support structures, including how students are identified and connected to the right supports. We are certainly encouraged by the progress in this area and the ways that we're using data to strengthen connections and student supports.
Yeah. So as we hopefully have drilled down a lot, when students are engaged, they tend to do things well in school. We tend to see a lot of those engagements and those outcomes increase. Our goal is, how do we emphasize that from the very first day? As Link Crew, which I'm super excited about, we want to help make York, which is a big school with a lot of resources and opportunities, feel small to students. So that way, when there are those inevitable moments of feeling overwhelmed, we want students to help them find their community, but we also want those systems that are working within the school day structure to identify students both during, before, and after those struggles, that we can continue to provide that continuum of support. We really want to identify students early. A big mantra within our student services team is we want to be first and foremost student-centered, but we want to be data-informed. Those 2 systems, that qualitative and quantitative balance, helps us, A, from a staff member perspective, it lightens that pressure because it is really hard to to feel that you're the only safety net for 270 students on your caseload if you are a school counselor, or 500 students if you're a school social worker or a school psychologist. These systems exist to help identify students, but they also exist to support those relationships that our team members are building with students, with family members, with older siblings. So we have a lot of data systems to sort of help proactively identify them. They're on the screen. I'm going to dive down a little bit deeper into the three on the top, which are academics, attendance, and behavior and well-being. Those are what we look at very frequently. Not that we don't, we also look, and we're going to talk a little bit more about student voice, college and career, and those support indicators. But the most impactful data that we really get to wrestle with on a day-by-day or weekly basis is how are students doing in school, how do they feel that they're doing, and then how do we support once we see trends start to emerge. So for academic progress, that's like the most traditional set of data, right? We want to make sure that students are doing well in their classes, that they're appropriately placed, that they're appropriately challenged, but also appropriately supported while they're engaging in a comprehensive high school education. So during that, our teachers are first and foremost on the front lines, identifying those students on a day-by-day basis of what they're experiencing in class, and that we're able to sort of take a little bit of a step back and look at like their formative data and kind of dive a little bit deeper on what trends do we see across all of their classes. But then we also get to look at like where academic concerns are popping up, but also like where are students starting to exhibit pre-signs of academic concerns of are missing assignments starting to come along? Are we starting to see some absences track up in particular areas or particular times of the day? And then, of course, over the 4 years, we want to make sure that we are not just preparing students to graduate with in terms of their GPA, but we want their high school to be, as Dr. Yonke mentioned, that 4 meaningful years that they're going to look back on fondly, but that 4 years also serves as a springboard for their future post-secondary goals. As Mr. Dykes mentioned, our attendance system, we really are able to focus on both macro level, so like how often a student is not in school at all, but we're able also to drill down and really focus on period by period absences and intervene with students before it becomes an all-day thing. So as an example, one of our attendance systems is when a student is missing a particular class, we want to have an increased level of parent communication. We want to have an increased level of communication with the stakeholders. So the teacher or the co-teacher, if that student has a case manager, they're getting enhanced levels of email communication during the first and second sort of absences from class. But then before they even see a dean for some sort of consequence or like restorative conversation, they're checking in with their school counselor first to say, what are we do? We're seeing this trend. You have skipped math class 4 times. Or you haven't been in math class 4 times. What's going on behind the curtain or under the surface so that way you can better identify that. And it may mean that, hey, you're not feeling confident in this class. Let's try and support that. How can we connect you with some additional support? It also has a lot of impact, and we've seen this data of students knowing that their team, their trusted adults are aware of their attendance. You know, almost a third of our students that meet with a counselor for their 4th absence in a class don't get a 5th absence to that class. So like right then and there, we're eliminating that concern before it becomes an ongoing thing that our deans and our campus supervisors are having to deal with. We also, and it's mentioned on the slide, but we also when we look at our attendance, we also want to look at engagement, both in class and in the wide range of activities and opportunities we have for students. So if a student has gone through the first semester of their freshman year and they haven't yet engaged with a club, a sport, some sort of activity, we want to that's a good opportunity for us to check in with them to say, we want you to have opportunities to make this school feel like it's yours. Then let's think about what are some opportunities. What are you interested in? Let's try and find some outlets for you. Again, going off of that for behavior and well-being, we want to stay on top of our discipline referrals and trends earlier. I'd rather see them quickly than having to wait of like, oh, you have now 20 referrals. But we're also identifying those, where are these behaviors happening, when are they happening, what time of day are they happening, and then we're able to pair that student with an appropriate response, whether it be through one of those behavior groups that Mr. Dykes mentioned, or just sort of a regular cadence of checking in with one of their team members. So we are going to dive in a little bit. What those systems look like are kind of some examples here on our present work and our current systems. The first and foremost, the one that happens most regularly, is our problem-solving team. So each student at York has a dedicated school counselor, school social worker, school psychologist, and dean. Those student support teams meet weekly to do some data review meetings and problem-solving kind of identifying students, both in terms of what they are bringing, what awareness they're bringing, but also using and leveraging our next path data and academic concerns to identify students in need of support, ideally before it becomes a red flag. We want to see it while it's a yellow flag and then intervene appropriately. How those problem-solving teams kind of, what comes out of those, we've seen a really big push and expansion of, is our Tier 2 SEL small group curriculum. So when we identify students that have a particular need in a variety of social emotional areas, we want to then pull them and get them into a small group environment to work on some building increased coping skills, targeting that intervention, and then we are able to really leverage some dedicated space in our building, but also some progress monitoring tools. So that way we're not just providing an opportunity for a group to happen, but we're also saying, hey, we know with confidence that we're providing and developing this group curriculum to align with the student needs, and then we're able to say, hey, they've made this tangible progress in whatever skill we're looking at. We also have our Bridge program. This is an intentional reentry program for students returning from long-term absences, whether they be medical absences or mental health hospitalizations. We know and we've seen, especially as we've gotten further from the pandemic, we know that our students are prioritizing their mental health both in school and outside of school. We want that transition as students are getting that support out in the community to be a smooth transition back to school, so that way they can transition back to where they should be, which is in their classes, building those engaging and meaningful learning moments. We've already talked about the counselor attendance intervention. I just wanted to say, like, it has been so heartening to see that impact, and then to hear from students. Tim and I had an exchange with a student in our first year of rollout where he had missed a class. He didn't feel it was important to be there, but then he was like, well, I missed one and my parents got an email. I missed the second one, my parents got an email. The third one, I got a lunch detention, and the fourth one, my counselor came in and checked in with me. Like, in that student report, like, it was really important for that student to know and to feel that there were adults in the building that cared about him and wanted to help hold him accountable, but also help him recognize that, like, you matter, you being in class is important. We want to help support you in that. Lastly, we've been really fortunate, and again, with Dr. Rubenstein's kind of work of like leveraging our systemic like data collection with Panorama and 5 Essentials to kind of use that tools and use those data insights to figure out where are some opportunities that we can further expand some of our group offerings, what are our building level needs in terms of the social emotional learning, and then we've leveraged that into tier 1 opportunities like happening in the classroom led by teachers with push-in from student services, but then also how do we build out some skill-based groups and curriculum for students who may be struggling. To kind of highlight that, we really want students to feel engaged. So on the slide, I have 2 examples of our tier 2 small group curriculum, Crafting with a Purpose and Calm Collective. These groups serve very similar students. These are both anxiety processing skill building groups, but we know that we want students to feel comfortable, to feel confident, and to feel empowered in those groups. As the least artistic person in this room, which I can say confidently, I would not identify with Crafting with a Purpose, but I know and I've seen the power of students being able to go into that group with the mentoring and support of a school psychologist and a school counselor in there to engage in creative expression while also working on some coping skills and just working and rehearsing how they're feeling about their day, what they feel in terms of like their mental load. And then the other kind of opportunity, the Calm Collective, is an example of a more traditional processing group where students are meeting weekly with that small group of students and a co-facilitated model with other student services team members. They are working on supporting each other by talking about, it's important for students to hear that what they're experiencing is also likely being experienced by some of their peers. And then being able to talk and build that community and then be introduced to some coping skills and coping strategies. In each of these groups, we've identified these students through a variety of ways, whether it be through a systemic panorama data review, student referrals, parent referrals. One of the most impactful we've actually seen is teacher referrals. We did a level up learning with our teachers last year, telling them and explaining what the purpose of a Tier 2 group is and what our Tier 2 group curriculum are. And we got a flood of teacher referrals of like, I know I've been talking with this student about this in class. I think this group would be a really good idea. We also wanted to leverage that strength of the relationship, is that we can tell, assuming the teacher is comfortable with it, like telling the student, your teacher recommended you for this, and we've seen a lot more increase in our students' willingness to participate in that group. All of our group sessions typically happen over between 6 to 8 weeks. It's typically once a week, and we'll rotate the periods. And then we progress monitor student experience, how they're feeling about the group, but then also how they're self-reporting about the skills and the thing that we're trying to get at. What are we working on? How are you feeling more confident in expressing those and using those coping strategies in your day-to-day life? We would be remiss without talking about data. If we're going to say we're going to be data informed, we got to be data informed. I have been really fortunate. I'm going to give a huge shout out to Dr. Wirtz because of his help and support with NextPath. We candidly would not have this level of data at the granular level to talk about our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports without this comprehensive system of NextPath. So we have been doing a lot of professional development with our teams of how to track this in doing so in a way of like, we want to do this because then it allows us to effectively see a history of that student. Without a system like that, when a student is a junior or a senior, you may have to like go back into your mental Rolodex to be like, they were in a group freshman year, like how did that go? But with NextPath, we're able to see the past, the current supports that a student's engaged in, and then also use that data to predict future supports. So one of the things that we've been really proud to see is specifically with our school counselors is that we have 525 students this year at York participating in Tier 2 and Tier 3 school counseling services. If you want to look at an MTSS model, that's about 20% of our building, which is kind of where we want to see about that we're servicing most of our students at the Tier 1 level by pushing in, but we've been really fortunate to be able to use this data to track these students that are requiring like more frequent and more kind of periodic check-ins, where if they're meeting with their counselor, say every week or every other week, we can capture that data, but then also use NextPath to track how are they improving in their academic journey. To summarize, what we look to do and what we're excited to continue to build is continuing the development of our Tier 2 group curriculum. We're really excited to use, and we just did Panorama, so we're going to see our data in a couple of weeks, identifying and continuing to identify student needs in our building, and then finding opportunities to develop new Tier 2 group curriculum. But additionally, we want to help with our students of what does a group and what does prioritizing your mental health and your social emotional learning look like, in addition to building out your comprehensive academic schedule, your comprehensive extracurricular demands. And then we're really excited using that NextPath tool to continue to implement and enhance our progress monitoring, not just that we can see how we're supporting students, but then how can we reflect back and see how can those group curricula continue to support the next wave of students and in future years. With that, I'm going to transition to Mr. Piaczynski to talk about how we are going to empower students as we look to life after York.
All right. So tonight I'm going to kind of break down our current state and our current system that we have in place. But then more importantly, I'm going to kind of talk about the evolution of next steps and where we're headed. So currently our system, it has a lot of strengths, but there are some limitations. And when we look at it, our current system is very college-centered, task-driven. Have you done the checklist? Have you submitted your application? Have you requested your transcripts? Have you done all those basic things to get into those college admissions? Which it doesn't really dive into an individual student and look at what other supports and what other things can we put into place and what other interests do those students really have. And so we want to explore looking at what pathways those students, when they enter high school, can they go through all the way up to senior year. Also, our current system is very adult-driven. It's a lot of the counselor pulling them in for a one-on-one meeting. Did the staff member check in with them? But they kind of limits the student ownership of really diving in and doing interest inventories and exploring their real interest in kind of what they want to do for post-secondary. Also, our current system, it's a little aged, so it's not the best and easiest to navigate for our students who are becoming very tech savvy. So we got to kind of keep up with the times with them as well. Also, it's very limited on being able to see the current usage of when students are jumping in and diving into different, post-secondary and colleges. When we look at next steps, we really dove into it, and this is prior to me, but I was part of and I think you guys did it with the school links and said now we are going to move into school links. And the great thing about it is that it's this platform where everything is kind of in one spot. There's no more longer of piecing things together, going from one platform to another. With school links, it's going to be all in one place, looking at some, really those key things of counseling, CTE, work-based learning, accountability, where the students are now able to kind of do a cohesive journey from start to finish. And it allows them, to really dive into their interests, post-secondary plans, as well as it gives staff and counselors kind of a broader picture of where a student wants to go and wants to be. And then on top of it, the last great thing it does is it connects with the alum. So alum are able to reach back out on the platform and tell us, I'm attending this school, or I've transferred to this school, I've graduated with this degree, or I'm going out to get my master's. So it's a great platform that kind of puts it all together. Then we can look at how did we prepare students for post-secondary, and where our D205 students have landed after leaving York. So it does look very different. Like I said, it's more for the tech-savvy students, more up with the times. But the biggest thing is it really looks into different types of assessments to explore what the student truly is interested in and what are options out there besides the 5 universities you hear everyone go to. There are so many different opportunities across the nation that they can go to. So this platform kind of puts it, like I said, all in one place. Another great part is it multi-year plans. So it'll start rolling out with the 6th graders where they can see, all right, in 6th grade, I'm interested in this. How did it change in 7th grade? And so on all the way through a senior year. And it also, like I said, it tracks progress in real time. So anyone from the YSS team can jump on and see how many students are doing what, when are they doing it. If a student hasn't engaged in the platform, those are the times that we need to have those one-on-ones. We can pull them in and say, hey, I see you haven't logged on and done your career interest inventory. And like I said, it's just a modern interface that with our new tech-savvy students, they can use it very quickly, easily, and at any time they can access it. Also, the great thing about this is it builds a student profile while they do it. So, like I said, as they are going through and doing their different interest inventory, career inventories, college inventories, it starts to build a specific student profile. Students then can enter their what goals they have, what aspirations, where they want to be, and then they can create their own resume all on one platform and it is housed there. Then they are able to use that resume and they can send it out to colleges, and it just kind of really throughout the entire years of using it builds their story. So they have their own personal profile that they can use for any sort of post-secondary that they choose to. So it really is them driving themselves in this platform with obviously the assistance of the staff, but it's really honed in on that student center. They are exploring what makes them, what is their interest in, what makes them the student that they are. So the great part about it is we just implemented this with the juniors in March, and when you look at it, with our current stats, we had 78% of juniors have already done the career engagement survey. 83 have already done the career path assessment, as well as many of them are diving into the colleges. So on average, students are favoriting 6 colleges, and then when they do favorite a college, they are able to look at admissions requirements, what the college has to offer. There are a few students who I will say that we have one student has favorited 67 colleges, so we might need to hone in on that one student. But it's just great. We get this real-time data. We can we can poll at any time and see who's engaging with the platform, who's selecting colleges. But it's just really great to see that really 83% of our juniors from when we implemented it in March are already on the platform and, kind of doing the work, as then we progress in the fall when it's everyone, let's get in there and, see where we can go. And then kind of just moving forward, we want to just continue to expand on the career pathways. What does a student want to do? Where do they want to go? And this platform, it has that capability for students to really dive in and look at all the different options, as well as it'll align from sixth grade all the way through senior year. And kind of how I mentioned that as a sixth grader, they can see, and everything ends up saved on there. So you can see how you've progressed as a student. So if you decided you wanted to be this, your career interest was this sixth grade, and now you're a senior, and you're like, whoa, what was I thinking? It's great for them to see where they've grown, and as a staff, those are additional data that we'll be able to pull and see kind of the trends of where our students are lining up to and what colleges they've all favored and are liking, and then it kind of then drives us when we look at instruction type things or college admissions. If we see that a large percentage of our students are looking to go to this college, okay, those are the things that let's pull that college rep in to see if there are things that have changed for admissions. So it's just really the big thing is keeping students engaged in their own outcomes in their post-secondary and kind of letting them, steer the ship with us helping them in the background. And I think that
You
is.
got it, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as you've heard this evening, there's a great deal of work that is being done, and intentionality in that work that has gone into how we're supporting our secondary students. With that said, there is also a lot more work ahead of us to ensure that our students are able to identify their passions and purpose. That's part of our strategic plan along our student journey of excellence. As we do that, we will really focus on ensuring that all students have meaningful and fully aligned first-year experiences. Mr. Dykes talked about at York High School that sets them off on that path for success. We're also going to identify the supports, additional opportunities for additional student mental health supports that can and should be provided to our students. And then finally, we'll continue to align our work to the Illinois PACE framework and our own strategic plan as we continue to identify opportunities for students to explore some new career opportunities. Our vision really here is that a student will, as Mr. Piaczynski was talking about, will start in sixth grade, start to identify some of their passions and purpose, that we will have a fully aligned college and career pathway for each of our students so that they can say, maybe I'm interested in the health sciences. And where we are going with that is then that there would be potentially a college and career pathway of courses that are available to them at York Community High School, that they could maybe earn some sort of a certification, an additional piece there, and be able to explore colleges and universities, do all of that in our secure platforms and with our different student supports. So with that, I will turn it back over to all of you. We listed some questions here. I have seen all of you writing some questions, and so we really are excited about this work and passionate about it, and would be happy to entertain any questions.
I think, Dr. Rubenstein, I'm going to jump in here for a minute because before, I'm sure that there are some questions and some points of clarification that the board would like to share. But I do want to first provide an opportunity for board members to also give a nod to some things that they've heard that are important and are of value and thing that also aligns with the direction and the work that they expect of us as administrators. And I think there's so much that has been shared, and I first want to say thank you to the leaders that are in the room. But I also know that this work is not just because of the 3 leaders in the room, that this work is because of really dedicated staff and students that have come along this journey. And as a district, over the last 5 years, we've been on a continuous improvement journey. We've made much progress. We've heard some of the highlights, and we also understand that there still is more work to be done. And so I first want to just say thank you for sharing that, but also want to give my board an opportunity before we dive into questions to just speak to some of the things that they heard that they are proud about and feel is important to reiterate for our community.
Can I go? Or do you want to go? Sorry.
No, you can go.
Okay. Thank you for the presentations and for just the very comprehensive overview of what's happening in the student services departments. A couple of things I really loved hearing about was I love the new Link crew. I think that's such a great idea to help incoming freshmen who are nervous and just need someone to connect with in the building and have kind of a person. I think that's great. And I also, like you said, I love that it also helps develop leadership qualities and skills in 11th and 12th graders. So overall, I'm excited about that. I also loved hearing about the Tier 2 interventions and the SEL groups. Those are near and dear to my heart. I'm very fond of those. And I do have a couple questions when we get to the question part about just a little more information I'd be seeking about those. But I love that there's different groups happening for students who are in need of just a little more support. And I know there's been lots of hard work done on the We Are Dukes campaign. I will say, I know you had said coming into the building, it just feels more Duke-ish, which it does. I mean, I haven't really been in the building a ton prior to a couple years ago, but it feels very, like very, it just feels, you can feel that strong vibe there. And my favorite though is driving down St. Charles when you kind of go through the whole, like, I want it to be named something. I've actually said this, like I want it to be like called like Duke Alley or like Duke Street or something. Because like the whole, when you go back like where the football field is and like York's on this side, it just feels like you're in Duke territory. So I love that. So thank you again for all the work and for this presentation. And I appreciate all the support that students are receiving because of this.
I think we can go into questions. I mean, I think we're going to go all over the place a little bit on this one. So if you want to start with that, I mean, what are we going to do? Yeah.
Stick with Dr. Campbell's.
I mean, I think it's meant to be a committee and a discussion, so.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
I just had some, I know you're not, like, you obviously didn't go into great depth about each group and each Tier 2 intervention group, but just curious, I mean, I love like Crafting with a Purpose and Calm Collective, and I'm sure there's many others. I think that's super fun and probably very helpful to a lot of students. But also curious if there are like evidence-based groups, like just some that I know of off the top of my head, like the Rush University Executive Functioning Group, or like CBITS, Cognitive Behavioral Intervention for Trauma in Schools. So just like things like that are more evidence-based and really focused on specific either skills or deficits that can help students. And then on top of that, how are we measuring? I know there's Panorama, but like, how are we identifying if those skills are being applied in school, and then also like if it's effective, if it's helping a student?
Yeah, so I can talk, I will say, like, what I didn't mention is one of our groups, we talked about 2 anxiety groups. We also have a set of executive functioning groups, and you guessed it, like many school districts, we are also using the Rush curriculum. Somewhere along the way is going to come up with a better one, but for right now, Rush is kind of the gold standard. In addition to, as Tim mentioned, we also utilize our Character Strong group, which is a Tier 2 and Tier 3. We primarily use it in Tier 2 for some of our social emotional learning groups that don't have as much of a creative outlet. But yeah, so we do have a set of evidence-based curriculum that we use both at the Tier 1 and at the Tier 2 level. That would be like in larger groups, but then also like working with smaller groups of between 6 and 8 students. So yes, so there are, we do have other examples of evidence-based groups, and we are looking, as many districts are, to continue to identify those, particularly at the high school level, because as you also asked, our progress monitoring is largely right now focused on kind of a pre and post, both at the beginning and end of the group, but also pre and post, like during. So we're taking those sort of like dipstick measurements of like how students are experiencing those. We're getting that, we ask students to fill out a pretty lengthy reflection at the end of each group. And then in terms of monitoring, we're continuing to monitor those students on some of those problem solving, like if a student is checking into student services, how often are we seeing a decrease in them coming down in moments of maybe not full-fledged crisis, but like if they're coming down in need of like just-in-time support, we want to see that decrease. We want to see them increase their time in classes as well.
Again, I'm assuming you're doing all these things, but you are measuring like number of crises in a month or whatever.
Yep. So we have, while we highlighted our tier 2 and tier 3 group, we also have a system where like if a student is checking in with a team member, that is being logged, and then we can go back and pull that. We're also logging in our like kind of sign-ins to our student services teams, and when we see both into student services, but also into like say our health office, if we're seeing an increase or a recent increase in that, that's an opportunity to sort of check back in to see what's driving that increase or the recent increase in that behavior.
Beth.
Okay, thank you so much. That was, we kind of got a little bit, okay, sorry. We got a little bit of a presentation when Court and I were at York in this, and, you know, I was impressed with all the work being done then, and it's just really nice to have a comprehensive overview of all of it. One thing, Mr. Dykes, is that I love the student involvement and the student voice, and I think that when you have students developing ideas and programs and engagement, students tend to attend it. You know, like we can make up whatever we want, but a lot of times you think, this is the coolest thing, being someone who's, you know, planned parties for 8th graders where you think you know what they want to do, and then they're like, we don't want to do that. So, you know, you can create anything you want, but getting them to come and participate and be a part of it is, you know, the most important part of it. And I think you engaging all of the students in that work is really impactful. And I hear kids who are talking about Duke Olympics that wouldn't normally be, you know, into something like that. So I feel whatever, you know, students are doing to get other students involved and what you guys are doing to get students to engage in that is obviously working. So I'm sure you've seen attendance higher because you've got that involvement from the students. So, and we heard from them at the York tour, and they were really great. And then, Mr. Talbot, you were talking about the attendance piece, and I love the, you know, checking in with students. You know, they've missed a class once, twice. I've in the past, I had heard like, nobody cares, right? You hear it in college too. You have this huge class and they're like, you don't go to class, like, well, nobody notices, nobody cares. So obviously somebody's noticing, and now they know that, and I could see the difference that could make for a student when they know, oh, someone is going to notice if I'm not here, and how that can change their behavior very quickly. So I love that. And then just helping at the same time to build those relationships that we talk about being so important, and just having opportunities to check in with those kids. One question, you talked about if, you know, noticing those patterns of attendance and noticing if kids are not involved in clubs. Do you have a way of monitoring, like if you have a student who's been in a lot of clubs and very involved, and then all of a sudden not so involved, maybe second semester, they're not going to clubs, they're not as engaged as they were before? I don't know if that's something that you guys are able to monitor through these systems as well.
All right, so Student Activities 5-Star is a program that we use to take attendance at clubs, and I will say that it is developing. There are some that do it consistently every time they meet. There are others that it's building. You know, this is Matt's first year in this position of Student Activities Coordinator, so he's done a tremendous job of kind of really pulling everything together, and I think that is one thing that he's really focused on this year, is getting some really true, accurate data. Because we know that sometimes there's students who say they're in like 19 clubs, but they go to like one all the time, and
Yeah.
they've gone to a whole bunch just one time. And so it's really seeing what's the true representation. So to answer your question, yes, and still developing. Yeah.
Great, great. It just seems like a change like that could indicate something going on,
Correct.
even if it's not in class and they feel compelled to go to class every day. Some of those things they enjoy, dropping off might be another way to, track an issue.
That's a really good point too, and I think what we also see is cycles that students go through. And I was talking to Athena about this earlier. Like there are moments in time where, tryouts and like there's very entering into a new sport, right? Or during a time where we're getting closer to the end or the start of the semester, and how is that impacting where students are emotionally, and is there data that we can look at to then be able to be responsive? I think it's something that is an opportunity for us, definitely.
Great. And then lastly, we were talking about the, college or career path exploration, and the fact that that students can start looking at that earlier, like in 6th grade, is amazing. I think as a parent, I never knew about all of the opportunities available at York until sometimes it was a little too late for my kids, and like you had to have done this class in order to do that class. Or so being able to like look at those things early and then be able to talk to somebody about what does that look like for me, not just as a career, but at York, and what might I think about in my, class planning, so that I can make sure I can do medical health pathways or medical, career pathways.
So I'll give you the boring behind the scenes. Right now, for the course planner, there's a few of us that we have to take the program of studies, and Kevin was talking about like creating those pathways. So right now we have to we're taking everything from Power School into schooling. So the students, when they dive in, and they actually can select their courses for all 4 years, and you can change it, but that's kind of like what we're going to go towards when they sit down with their counselors to schedule their courses. But they will be able to select a class, and if it doesn't have the right requisites, it'll give a red X. So they'll be able to plan freshman year all 4 years, and that's kind of like what we were talking about, the course pathways. If you want to go into like the health field, then the idea is that you select health, and then you'll see all the courses that kind of lead that way. So we are just piecing all those pathways together right now. It's a tedious process, but it's coming along, and it'll be ready to go for the fall. So
Great. And it seems like a lot when you're in middle school, but also it's really important if you do want to take advantage of those opportunities to know that ahead of time and kind of know your strengths and your, skill set. So I appreciate all that work. And then lastly, I know you guys are doing a lot of work that not only is going to help students choose their next steps after York, but also helping to build some of the skills that they'll need to be successful once they get there. I think the mentoring program that you were talking about, you see that a lot in college and in the workplace, that you're working with someone that's more experienced or older, and you get to go to that person as a mentor and ask questions. And so having a system like that in high school, then when they get to the next place they're going to be, they're like, oh, I've seen this before, I've done this before, this is, I'm just wondering if there is ever a time where we engage with leaders from maybe some of the colleges that our students go to, or common workplaces that hire a lot of young people, to find out, are there things that we can do that kids might be just lacking a little bit of. I hear about it at college presentations that I've been to about 900 of. Like, just like kids knowing to advocate for themselves and not feeling lesser than if they need to go get supports, or time management and, executive functioning, studying for difficult comprehensive exams, things like that. Is that something that we ever, I'm sure in your work you're thinking about those things all the time, but just wondering if that's feedback we ever receive.
So there are some structured ways that we do that through our college and career counselor at York High School who regularly gets feedback about how well prepared our Dukes are as they are headed into school. We also just know informally about how students are doing, not necessarily our students, but what, we are hearing the same things from colleges and universities that students are needing to develop more of their time management skills and those pieces needing to come into place earlier in high school. And so that's part of that intentional work there. So I certainly think that our schooling's platform is going to allow for some greater intentionality around that work and continue to allow us to progress in that area.
Great. Thank you all so much for being here and sharing everything.
All right. No, very impressive work. I think it was great to hear about all of the systems and programs you put in place. Love the student involvement, like others have said. I think, oh goodness, just some highlights. I don't want to totally repeat what others have said, but the Link crew, again, just love that I have an incoming 9th grader next year. So just the thought of students, and I've heard that transition can be really, really challenging. So I do think having leads that they can connect with that are students is just an amazing opportunity. I love how you're using NextPath. I remember being at these meetings and talking about, do we approve NextPath and what are we going to do with that? And so actually hearing it come to fruition and what you're doing with it and how you're applying it, I think is great to see in terms of like the student supports for Tier 2 and Tier 3. And then again, the college and career pathways, I just think that the improvements that you're talking about making and really making that more modern and more applicable, I think is really great. I love the comprehensive assessments, and I was curious, where and when does that happen? So you said it's introduced to them in 6th grade and it's very student-driven, but do they learn about it in class, or how is it introduced?
Actually, next week, I'm meeting with the middle school counselors, so there have already been in place some lessons that have gone with our current college and career pathway system. And so we are plotting out really intentionally next week where that work will occur. It'll more than likely occur in like our flexible learning lab, where every student will take a career pathway assessment, briefly talk that through, work with others on that, and it's sort of intuitive in that way. Once we open the system, and the system is actually open now, but once we open the system and really help students to understand it a little bit more, they can go back and take that any number of times that they would like to see if they get a different result. They can really just better understand what that looks like. So our goal is, and we're not quite there yet, but our goal is that every student will take those, a series of those 8 assessments any number of times so that they can really have a well-developed idea about their pathway for the future by the time they are done at York High School.
That's great. And I love, Beth, what you were talking about is how do they kind of learn more from maybe people who have gone through it. So I think whether you have people in the community and maybe you're already doing this, or student alumni come back and kind of talk about that transition, because it makes it real for them versus my teacher's telling me I need to get better at time management. Maybe to have someone who's just graduated talk about that, or, I remember graduating high school and thinking I could be like a teacher, doctor, lawyer. Like those were the 3 things, and seeing how much people's career paths change. I mean, so often they're not actually ending up where they thought they would. So I think, having people show them, the different paths that you can take. I was going to say last, I think it's last, and I have a question. I like the idea, one of the questions you had is, how do you share this work with others? And I often sit in these meetings and think, this is so amazing. And I don't know that I would know it if I weren't on the school board or if I weren't watching these meetings, which I don't know that a ton of our community members are watching these meetings all the time.
High engagement there, yes.
So I do wonder, and Tanya, you do a great job of like getting out communication. I even wonder, is there an opportunity for like a parent open house? I mean, I know, I've got 1,000 text messages between 8th grade parents saying like, what's happening next year and what's going on and what tools are available. So I'd even wonder, as these parents that are still super engaged in their kids' lives, I think they'd be really impressed to know all of the things that we have to offer at the high school because it feels really overwhelming to parents. Did I miss that? Did I miss that part?
Specifically for incoming freshmen,
okay.
we do have Rising Freshman Academic Night
went
and
to that.
Activities and Athletics Night.
Yeah, I think it's almost sorry.
Yep.
Yes.
This video, this section of this meeting, and put it in.
Yes. And maybe it's even
Well,
just for parents and families, not even students,
Right,
just
that's
to
what I'm
like
saying.
hear
Isn't
all
there-
the things.
There is that.
There is some. I think
Parent
that
night,
what I'm
an
hearing.
incoming parent night, right?
That what I am hearing here is that we can maybe be a little bit more intentional about that and share it in some different settings, that maybe the messaging isn't quite as clear as it needs to be, and so we can get there.
I also want to put this out there. A lot of this is relevant to where you are in the district. And so the school, of course, has an open house and a welcome parents into York, right? And this is what you can expect. I know that your staff go out to the middle schools and with York students and say, hey, and talk to kids about what they can expect. I think a lot of this happens with an embedding it's most effective when it's embedded at the right timeline too.
good point.
So I can sit here and listen to an hour presentation that is fantastic, but depending on where my child is, I'm going to have a different need. And I think that's the hardest part about communicating as a school, all the information to parents, family members, or students, and community. So I think there's this ability to, or an opportunity per se, where, and I think it's happening in all three of the areas that you are speaking about, there's opportunity for this to happen, especially like the easy one is the college career with the sixth graders. Like, there's these bridges that we can build that help with that transition to York, and it's outside of a program of studies that explains every class and pathway, soon to be. It's more real and relevant when your child is in that place. And so the way I see that, and I'm going to cut line if you don't mind on our thing, is that, and I know about the push from, PACE and the state and career exploration at young ages. I also want to highlight and remind us, and I know that you guys know this, but I'm saying it in this room, that there's something really normal and acceptable for a child to explore and not know.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
don't want us, and I know that I have a lot of people of structure and processes that I'm surrounded by, but we have to remember that it is okay to, and this is where I feel like it's more appropriate in a middle school, to explore. And so, and I think we see this with like Project Lead the Way. It is a big deal in a lot of our middle schools to a lot of our kids. It's a wonderful program. It's not for everyone. But what I do want is for children to have an experience to decide for themselves if it's something that might be that they're more interested in. And then once they have that experience, they get to learn and understand through the wonderful staff that we have what those opportunities look like as they continue on in their education in D205. So if I'm a sixth grader who loves STEM, what does that look like later on? Or what part of Project Lead the Way do I like? Is it the design element? Is it CAD? Or I don't even know if they're using CAD anymore. Is it the manufacturing side? Is it architecture? I don't know. But we have a comprehensive menu of course with a breadth and depth of curriculum that students then can be exposed, because the goal is that they're going to make an educated choice when they're juniors and seniors, right? And they make career change. I did. I did at a young age. Many of us have around this room. But that we're really focusing on exploration and identifying passion more than I need to know if I want to be a doctor today. And that's the framing of it that I'd love to hear us kind of dive into a little bit more when we're talking about this publicly, and the opportunities that lie for kids. Because again, they're children, and it is okay to not know. And I think the biggest asset for kids is to just expose them, to create opportunities for them to be exposed to a variety of experiences so that they then know more about themselves and they learn and they grow. So even when they do the career interest survey in sixth grade, I mean, we all know that 95% of them are going to look different by the time they're juniors. So, and we need to say that. We need to make that okay for kids, rather than we want to make sure that we get through 8 assessments and, it's that kind of quantitative versus the qualitative. They are children, and what is our goal? And our goal is to expose them so that they have a good understanding of who they are and who they want to become.
Yes.
That's kind of the big picture. I know you had
I
more,
think
so
I
I'll
was just
step
thinking,
back.
when you're saying that about the, some of the things that we approved with the foundation was helping us with at the last meeting, and just those experiential learning opportunities that come into the classroom. And I think those are those more, organic, natural things that they get to engage in and do that help them to say, oh my gosh, I love doing this, or I really don't like doing this, which is also just as important. So that just made me think of that.
It's the meaningfulness of the experience, right? I can check it off my list and get it done, but what am I taking away from that? And that happens between educators and children in the room. And so we can tell mom and dad about it all we want, but it really is most profound when, we're working with our students in the way that we do in a really positive manner.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that what we want to make sure of is that every student's able to explore and explore. And some of them are going to find it right away.
Some of them know.
Some of them know already. Some of us take
She knew, I
very
didn't.
linear pathways to finding their careers. Some of us, even when we get into our careers, do a little bit of wondering.
yeah.
I have a first master's degree in something else other than educational leadership. And so I think that is really important to point out, that wherever you're at in this journey as a student or as a family, things are going to end up okay. We just want we want to allow you to continue to explore as time goes on. So.
Yeah, and that's really the comprehensive high school experience,
Yes.
right? It's having the
Yes.
opportunities built in and available. Nikki, back to you.
And I know you mentioned Life Ready, and maybe you're not doing college as your next step. So I know a lot of our examples were college-based, which I think is great for a lot of people. But I think just continuing to explore and expose people to non-college paths.
Yes.
Because I think the workforce.
Or gap years.
And I have changed so much and continue to change so much. So I just want to encourage us to continue to highlight those two.
To answer that, this is actually a good time to talk about my example. I took the career interest inventory just to see,
As we were working through schooling.
I just wanted to see what it was like, and it came up that I was interested in agriculture.
Exactly.
So it's not
Perhaps there's a
necessarily
future.
just college, right?
Yes, exactly.
I think what we'll see, and what's really exciting about schoolings, is we get the opportunity to sort of shift that focus from students of what is it you want to do in your life, and for whatever that, as they're continuing to experience and get exposure to different things, if they identify a career field, we can then talk about what is the journey to get there. For our future doctor that knows at the first day, or our future teacher that knows, we know that we can set them up for that pathway. But as they get exposure to different careers that are tied to those content areas and classes that they're taking, we can then also talk about what does that journey to your goal look like. And I'm really excited about the schoolings being able to say, if it's identifying, say, a career that they're interested in, or that they may be interested in, that isn't necessarily a four-year college track or pathway, that's amazing. Then let's talk about what does your journey look like after York, and how can we also be meaningful and present in the moment of, let's continue to explore this interest. It may not, you may pivot to another thing, but then we can always come back to, what are you interested in? What does that journey look like to get you to that destination?
Whipping to the left side of the room now, my left, by the way.
Well,
He's got a lot of notes.
they're
They're stressing me out.
they should not
It's going to
stressed
stress
out.
the kids out real soon. No, I'm kidding.
I had so much to say when Dr. Campbell said, let's give kudos to you guys. So that's most of my notes, so don't worry about it. I could tell how passionate
That
you
was
guys
being
are
changed
about
by the
this. It's awesome. It's refreshing. I love it. It might be no energy auction, but still, it's still wonderful. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's a little inside joke.
250 grand.
No, but so I'll just go over things that I heard, even if I'm repeating some of the things. So I do love the career and technical education and the work-based learning platform. I think it's great to have pathways for students, whether they're going for college, but especially for those skilled trades, technical, and even the arts after high school. So I love that pathway-centered planning. I love the data-driven proactive approach for attendance behavior and academic concerns, but also for those tier 2 SEL groups that was mentioned before as well. I love that we're reaching out to students who have not joined groups and encouraging them to come in, and I hope that the development of the link crew can help with that too and encourage people, because sometimes it just takes somebody to reach out and to invite somebody for them to join. I love the support-driven remedies rather than the consequence-driven. I mean, not saying that there's not consequences to everybody's actions, but the focus is more on how do we get past that? How do we grow from that? How do we make better decisions in the future? So I think that's super important that you guys focused on. I love that you mentioned about supporting other groups and getting points for going to other things. If I went to the Clockmaker's Daughters play, play, it was fabulous, and I did notice that there were tons of other students in the audience that I have not seen before. So whatever you're doing, it's working. So keep it up. And I love to see how integrated and kind of ingrained that the Duke's acronym is, whether it's in sports or drama or curriculum or social. It's good to have that base that everybody can refer to throughout. So my only question, and I might have two, but one is, you said you were here 3 years ago, and that's when kind of this started. Was that your idea? Were you the point person for that?
The We Are Duke stuff?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. So there was a PLC in student services that had started the year before me as a restorative practices PLC, and I have a big background in restorative practices, so I kind of came in and joined that group, and they were like, hey, we've got this idea, and they kind of already had the idea for an acronym, and hadn't really gotten very much further than that, but they had also just started talking about it in the spring, so we just kind of took it and ran from it from there the next year.
Cool.
So to add on to that, to be clear, Mr. Dykes on his second day was asking me where's the data? What are we looking at? How are we going to drive this forward? So he's not giving himself enough credit for that because you have heard this evening just the need to really rely on some of those key indicators that we have come to rely on, and that is really driven by the current leaders who are sitting before you, and so just really appreciative of that hard work.
Excellent. And I think that whole developing leadership can kind of lead into the second question, which is more for us possibly, but it could be to think about putting something on an agenda in the future about maybe having a student representative on the board. And I think that's a good pathway to maybe get that discussion started. So thank you, guys.
I'm not going to go into all the things I love because all of you sitting here know that I love all this. But I just want, as I was sitting here listening to the presentations, I tried to think about why is this so successful? And it all comes down to because whatever you did, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific program, but you all got student buy-in. You got the kids to believe that they were going to make a difference. And they are. And, we all have kids coming to York or at York, and it's making a difference. If from sitting here today to sitting here 3 years ago, I can tell you that it's been impactful, and it's because of your leadership, so really appreciate everything that you are all doing. So just a couple clarifications for me. Is Linked Crew going to replace FOG, Freshman Orientation Group?
Yep. So Link Crew is the start to our, so FOG is our first year orientation and guidance curricular program. It is going to help to elevate that as we continue to evaluate what components are really necessary. So we know that we are going to need to embed further college and career pathway readiness pieces there. And so over the course of time, we will utilize the momentum from Link Crew to help elevate that experience.
Because, I mean, FOG is a small window at their lunch period, and it
Yep.
seems like Link Crew is more of a relationship.
That's
So
exactly it.
I can speak a little bit. The reason I was hesitant to answer is the training that we've gone through isn't complete yet.
Okay.
So again, we went through this first phase of training in March, and that was just to get us to the point where we can run this orientation on the first day of school. There is a follow-up training for all the people that attended that training. For some reason, they do it in September or October. I'm not sure why. But then at that training, they talk about potential follow-up opportunities throughout the school year. So we know we're going to do more next year. We just don't know exactly what that looks like yet. And FOG will still be happening. So it's kind of like both happening at the same time. But I think there is definitely, there's opportunity for both to thrive and to take from what we're learning with Link Crew and apply it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone here has spoken to the point that the more resources we can give, incoming students, the better. And so if maybe the Link Crew doesn't, you didn't connect with your Link Crew person, maybe your FOG person is the person you connect with, and it's just another face in the hallways that those incoming freshmen will know. So
It's also another leadership opportunity
Right.
for our juniors and seniors.
Yep.
So,
Could you just talk a little about the York Student Success Center, those Tier 2 behavioral supports, and what that looks like?
Yeah, so this is the first year, and again, it's not something that you see in very many places. So I'm gonna name Matt Bold. He is our Student Success Center coordinator, and he's done a fantastic job of basically creating it from scratch. It's been a lot of, hey, Tim, can we try this? Can we do this? Looking at different curricula that's out there to support the work that's being done in there. And then Matt has worked very closely with Mark as well in terms of tracking data, progress monitoring, and seeing kind of what students do we want to try to get into these groups, and then what's next for them. Some of them, we basically have 3 different avenues they can go. Like, hey, this worked great, and this kid is really thriving. They don't need much of a follow-up. This kid could really use some sustained support, and so let's keep them in here for another 6 weeks of support. Or, you know what, this wasn't enough. We need to be a little bit more intensive whether it comes working with social workers, working with deans, to follow that MTSS model of moving up to Tier 3 support.
So all those kind of things that you're looking at with the data, is that how you're targeting the kids that are using the support center?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're looking at Swiss data
Okay.
from the previous year to see like, okay, who are our, and we intentionally this year really focused mostly on sophomores and juniors. So looking at their 9th grade data from last year. And we're going to look to expand that a little bit more, but we really, since it was the first year doing it, we really wanted to have kind of more of a control group. Knowing that sometimes our seniors, that stuff can be a little bit more difficult to reach with groups, but yeah.
Okay. And then school links. All right. I have tried. I'm sure it's very intuitive to our students. It is not intuitive to me.
Yes.
So can we put some kind of parent tutorial? I don't need an in-person thing. Make a video, because if I have to ask one more question and get the side eye about why don't you get this,
Yeah.
I might lose it. I want to understand it better. It just, and again, I've only done Naviance, right? So I'm sure I just need a tutorial. So if we could put something out, because I'm sure I'm not the only junior parent and now sophomores and freshmen, like as you roll this out to all the other grade levels, a parent tutorial would be awesome. So it's just a little PSA.
That is all.
Beg for help.
Yes. So we wanted to start with the juniors because that is where they're beginning. Really, that will really have a full onboarding in the fall that will introduce to parents and families exactly how to access that data, what they're using it for, what that really looks like, and so that you'll be able to see your own child's, not exactly, where they chose their pieces there, but so you'll be able to have an informed conversation. It looks like you're really interested in education. We've never talked about education, right? Like as a career for you, to really help to onboard parents to that.
Yeah, and I think, like has been mentioned here before, I think once that gets down to the middle school rising freshmen, that's going to be a really great platform to parents to have those conversations. I think when you're the juniors, rising seniors, you're kind of more nervous about, is it going to be as effective in getting all the things out of it they need to apply to college and moving forward? Like, I couldn't find, like, where are the letters of recommendation uploaded, and how does it link to the Common App? And, these are the things that the people in my year of high school are trying to figure out. And I'm assuming it's all going to be seamless, linked with Common App for applications and stuff like that, because I couldn't figure it out.
So a lot of those efficiencies that we see, and this is the logistics of how SchoolLinks or how Naviance are supporting students that are applying to colleges, a lot of that will kind of just transfer really seamlessly over to SchoolLinks. We're also, in addition to our parents in our senior in parent night, what we do every year, we also have a series of programming in the summer for students to work on their applications. A lot of this is going to be onboarding students as we continue to onboard that, but also helping parents be informed to help them navigate, because we know that when a child leaves York High School, they're still working on their college application and trying to figure out how to sync Common App and do all those things. And parents need to be able to be literate and informed enough on that system to help them figure out where to click. So we're already starting to revamp what our materials look like for our senior parent night that's put on through our CCRC, and then also thinking about how do we. You may not be able to go to the CCRC parent night, and we do put that up, but how can we also have some evergreen or lasting resources on our website so that families can connect with that and can connect through Schoology with the class of 2027.
Yeah, and I know Kevin and I have spoke about this, that, waiting until the fall, though, is really, I will just say, that creates such anxiety hearing you say that to me, because obviously I'm on this college journey right now with my junior, and there are schools out there that are saying that their applications are opening July 1st and July 15th. And kids are being told, well, you can't have your letters of recommendation, or you can't get a final transcript. And it's creating a whole level of anxiety for them, well, how am I going to get my application in, right? And these rolling applications that these universities are doing, we have to keep up with it. And I think SchoolLinks, from when I went to the rising senior parent night from the CCRC, which I loved, they said SchoolLinks would help address these deficiencies that Naviance hasn't or didn't. So I just, I'm hoping to see that somehow, before July 1st or July 15th.
Yeah, we're excited to use SchoolLinks. I'm sorry, Mr. Nice. We're also it's been really heartening to have some communication talking about how those timelines are moving up, and we don't control those timelines.
Right.
We can voice some frustrations, and I don't know if those timelines are ultimately serving students, but we also need to support students in that, which is why Dr. Rubenstein and Rudy have been really working at how do we streamline our process so that way we want to be able to send out student documents earlier in the cycle. We want to be able to have them to have a clear vision, because the last thing I want and the last thing we as a team want is for our students to be stressed unnecessarily.
Right.
We know that there's going to be some stress as they're navigating this transition, but the logistical stress, we want to try to minimize that.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough nut to crack, because you have to choose which timeline you're going to go from. And so many of our kids apply early action, which the earliest is going to be like October 15th deadline. Many of our students also want to submit Common App, but before the first day of school, so that they, maybe they're in a fall production or a fall sport. And we're balancing, the need to give staff time to write letters of recommendation, because that is such a big responsibility, and we want them to have the time to do that thoughtfully and well, of course. And then it's also your annual turnover of transcripts, right? When grades are due and how we roll into the next school year. It's just it's such a robust system. And I think if there's transparency in what we can expect as parents, as far as timelines go, then it's like, okay, at least I know. At least I know I could submit my Common App, and the school, when I put in the transcript request, is going to initiate that when they're ready on whatever date it is. So some like little tweaks like that could be helpful to the whole process, because I can submit my Common App and then wait for ACT and the school to send all the other resources, right? So, but I think, I don't know for sure, because my oldest is not of this age yet. She's a freshman, but I'd imagine it's that, that desire to be done with this process earlier and earlier. It's the college push of, I need to get it in, but it's also the, what are we realistically able to take on, and how do we communicate and set those expectations for everybody, and try to reduce that anxiety or stress. It's a stressful, Dr. Campbell was just talking about May. We were both like, when is May over? But,
But I want to caution us that, that we need, I think what you've said, but we need to be able to, I guess for my frustration is like, if there's a kid, and this is not my kid, who is applying to a program that opens on July 15th, and it's a program that has 85, a specialized program, right? That has only 85 kids getting accepted to it, like aviation programs across the country. They take 80 to 85 kids. And once those spots are filled, so these kids now, it's getting backed up. And I don't want us to be the reason that their
They don't
application is not
reviewed,
considered,
right.
because every box is not checked. And the boxes that are holding us back right now are letters of recommendation and submitting a transcript, not even a final one, not even an official
just
one, just an
this-
unofficial one.
Yeah.
And so that's the stress that I've heard from the last senior class, that maybe I'm manifesting it for about to start this summer. But I don't want us to be the cause of additional stress for our students, because I think there's so much good stuff going on, to minimize that stress, that should not be what holds us up,
Yeah,
or those applications.
I agree with it.
So,
Yeah, totally.
That's all I have. Thank you
Well, she
all for being here.
has. Is it my turn now? My Lord, everyone has said it all, I feel like. I just have, some just food for thought, just things to consider, or just voicing some things in the room that maybe haven't been voiced, but I'm sure are a part of the work that you're all engaging in. One is, and I don't know this, I'm just assuming because I've had experience in schools, that, at times, the wonderful work that's being done to support students throughout student services, as educators, sometimes if I'm not a student services educator and I'm an academic educator, I'm in academics, I say, well, that's Dr. Campbell's job, right? And I've really been a part of a system where the core of student-centeredness and support really is owned by all of the adults in the building. And what I mean by that is relationships with kids. And that is fundamentally the most important piece. And what I hear from you all is that that's the work that you're doing, establishing relationships with kids. And my hope is that the entire school is focusing on building positive and supportive relationships with kids, because that is going to be what ultimately has the greatest impact on the school culture, climate, and environment. And so even things like talking with staff about, when do we call home and not send the email? Like, is this a time that, whatever the circumstances are, whether it's a third absence or a missing assignment or a grade in a class, but just having those conversations about practice and why we do what we do. Because I think we can get caught in systems and boxes of that's your job and not my job. And I know that this is an area where it lives in every building. So I'm not going to accept that, well, no, we do that. No, this lives in every building, and we just have to acknowledge it and work towards that common understanding, and we're not all going to be great at it, and that's fine. But that we all have some onus over building positive relationships with kids, being mindful of their lives, stress, anxiety, what they have going on. If they're missing my class, I want to know why. And that might mean that I talk to them and not their guidance counselor, And so it's those things that I feel like I just wanted to put in the room around how we really have profound impact on the student experience. Another one is around, and I think that many of us, especially those of us who've been around for a while, have seen, growth in our students' experience in 6 through 12. It has improved. I do also think that even in this conversation, it's like, well, we talk about how it feels now, which is very different, we say, from before. I would encourage us to look at really because we're talking about the environment for kids, and so they should be the ones telling us if it's improving or not. And so how do we create some opportunities, and I'm not talking about 30 students in a group who are leading something new, I think that's great, but how do we reach the kids who are flying under the radar? How do we know that kids aren't falling through the cracks? And I'm not talking about the kids who are struggling academically or have something going on social emotionally. I'm talking about the kids who are getting by, and that we are always focused on maybe a certain tier 2, tier 3, but that all kids have adolescence happening. It's their life right now, and they're all in different places. And so that was just a thought I had about, measuring our impact, because there's a lot of good work happening. How do we measure our impact through the students' lens, and have them holding us accountable to our work? And what I loved the most about tonight is that you all are trying new things and you're implementing things that are new and different and taking those risks. I think that's awesome. I also think that there's these moments where, as you continue to develop, where you say, yeah, that's not working the way that I wanted it to work, and that's okay. And we're going to figure it out, and we're going to keep moving forward, because we have to model that for our students if that's what we're expecting them to do too. And I know that we're expecting them to do that in class every day, or on the soccer field, or in the performing arts program, or, in their art class. It doesn't matter what they're doing. So modeling that, I think, and being explicit about it, I think, is super important. I mentioned a little bit about, and I just don't, I know there's a lot of work going on, and I think it's like the next phase of student services work maybe is those kids who, aren't your typical, they're going to end up on my list who I have to follow up with, but I'm just being forward thinking in that. And I'm not saying that anybody needs to do anything or explain anything to me. I know there's a lot of really great work going on, and we're so fortunate to have the people in the places that they're at, in the roles that they're in, leading this work and being creative and focusing on kids, and that I know will continue. And as this kind of evolves, it's kind of like how we used to talk about the academics, right? We have to, the foundation had to be the foundation before we could focus on some more narrowed goals, right? And that's okay to just say that. It's fine. It's a part of the continuous improvement process. So that's kind of my feedback. Listen, you crammed a lot into 56 minutes, and there's a lot of information. That was just your section, by the way. But I just took a note. It was 48 minutes, but that's okay. I'm not digging that. There's a lot of good work going on, and the simple fact that we're doing it is what's most important. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep thinking critically, keep thinking creatively, and please, whatever, I know that you're working with a great district team too, who's laying a foundation and providing the pathway for you all to move forward in a really positive way.
What I hope came across in
Yes.
those 48 minutes, though, who's counting, is
Just me.
Is really just the passion for the work that is being done and for making sure that every student has an outstanding experience, not just at York High School, but in beyond.
Yes.
And so that it really creates a better community, it creates a better district, and I know from talking with these three individuals, but also from the others who are doing the work at York High School, that there is a lot of passion and purpose behind every single piece that is coming through. We don't always get it right on the first try, and
That's
that's
okay,
fine.
yeah.
But we are genuinely working to improve processes for students and their families.
And it's hard work. And you're doing it. Thank you.
I meant it when I said, when we were talking about Dr. Yankee and Mr. Bill taking over. There's a very, very strong assistant principal, directors, there's very strong people. And these three sitting here are examples of it. And that's why I feel so confident that we're going to be good this year, even though it's not where we want to be. But it's a very strong team supporting Dr. Yankee and Mr. Bild. So.
Anything else from anyone, including Dr. Campbell, who looked like she was going for her mic?
I was just going to just reiterate to the Board of Education how grateful I am for your support. Since having that privilege of serving our community, you all continue to have very high expectations for the administration. And you all have expressed that in many different ways. You've come alongside and really first and foremost set very clear directive in establishing a strategic plan with very robust goals. And as has already been mentioned, continuing to hold me personally and our administrative team accountable in service of our students. And I just wanted to say thank you. The fact that we even took time and really thoughtfully about tonight and sharing this information was because of feedback that I received from the board, was because of feedback of participating in board tours and saying our board and our community needs to know this, because of hearing from the Board of Education that we are concerned about the whole child. And we have continued to work on our academic programming, but a value that this board has raised to me personally is that we need to make sure that our students are doing well, not only academically, but emotionally and socially, as well as having all of the supports in place. So I just want to end by just saying thank you to the board, myself and my team that is sitting in this room, and so many others that are not in this room are committed to the continuous improvement efforts in service of our community and every student that we have the privilege of serving. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for a very robust committee of the whole meeting. Item 4 on our agenda is board communications. Are there any board presentations or conversations you'd like to have at this point? I'll take that as a no. Upcoming meetings, we have May 19th, 2026, the Board of Education regular meeting at 7 p.m. here at District 205 Center in rooms 215, 16, and 17. The time is now 7:56, and we are officially adjourned. Thank you.